Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why did he come back? Or rather, why does someone come to you just when you're starting to heal? Rumi said, "What you seek also seeks you." But what if what you're looking for isn't love? What if it's just pain dressed as longing, lack disguised as presence? There are only two reasons why someone would seek you out: for love or for necessity. One elevates you, the other consumes you. Maybe you're tired of being the salvation of those who only appear on cloudy days, tired of being an emotional shelter for those who only come when they're lost. Do you feel it? That is only remembered when the other person needs it, as if his worth lay in his pain and not in his soul. It hurts, but it hurts even more when you believe it is love, because what holds you back is not the feeling, it's the confusion. Confusing being essential with being loved, confusing presence with purpose, confusing return with healing. And Rumi saw this with the eyes of the soul. He knew that often, what seeks us is not the love we deserve. It is the other's fear of being alone. It's despair in the form of affection. It is need dressed in sweet words. And you? Do you feel it when this happens? Or do you still delude yourself with each turn thinking that this time it will be different? How many times have you broken down thinking you were being chosen, when in reality, it was being used as an emotional crutch? Maybe you've gotten used to this cycle, with this back and forth, with that silent dance where you always wait, and the other only appears when it bleeds. But today, something needs to change. Today you will hear the truth that no one told you. Not every "I miss you" is sincere. Not every return is a new beginning. Not every return is out of love. Sometimes, it's just the other person's need to ease their own pain with you. And when you understand that, something breaks. But also, something is released. You are not a healing station for wounded hearts that do not want to heal. You are a living soul, whole, and it deserves to be sought, out of love, not absence. If this has ever happened to you, if you've ever been the medicine for someone who never wanted to be healthy, write here in the comments, "I am not a temporary shelter," and stay with me, because what comes next will show you what no one told you about love, neediness, and the real reason why people seek you out. If this video is touching something inside you, it's not by chance. Perhaps it is because your soul, silently, has known this truth for a long time. You just needed to listen clearly, courageously, deeply. And that's why I ask you, don't just watch. Feel it. Allow yourself to dive into this truth that hurts, but that liberates. Because understanding this can change everything. When you recognize that you are not sought out of love but out of necessity, something changes. You stop accepting emotional crumbs. You stop confusing presence with connection. You start to remember who you are, without needing to be saved by anyone. So before we continue, take a deep breath. Put your hand on your heart, and if this video is telling you something that no one else has had the courage to tell you, leave your like. It's not just a click, it's a pact. A sign that you are ready to see beyond the illusion, that you want more than to be someone's emotional bandage. Subscribe to the channel too. Here, each video is a mirror of your pain and a portal to your healing. Here, we speak with the soul, and every time you return, you will find not cheap comfort, but profound truth. Now, let's go deeper, because you need to understand what's behind all this, what nobody told you, about the silent cycle of need, of attachment, and what Rumi already knew centuries ago. The true search begins within. Have you ever felt like you're only remembered when someone's world is falling apart? That you're sought out only when the other person has nowhere left to lean on? As if you were a kind of temporary safe haven, an emotional shelter only visited on stormy days. And then silence, then disappearance, then emptiness. This feeling doesn't come from nowhere. It stems from a pattern that repeats itself, silently, in your life. A cycle that always begins with promises, with sweet words, with looks that seem full of truth, but that deep down only carry need. Have you ever noticed how you're always the one listening, the one caring, the one understanding, the one supporting? You give your all. You give time, energy, presence. But when it's your soul crying out for help, the world seems deaf, as if you're only seen when others need you, and never when you need to be loved. And this is no coincidence. This is a deep reflection of an invisible wound you carry, a wound that often has a name: abandonment. Not necessarily physical abandonment, but emotional abandonment. That feeling of not being enough, of needing to earn love, of only having value when you're serving someone else. And Rumi said, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." But hasn't your heart been broken too many times? Isn't this constant breaking a silent plea from your soul for change? The truth is, many people come to you not for love, but for the security you convey, for the peace you offer, for the light you carry. But they don't come to stay. They come to heal. They come to be relieved. And when they feel better again, they leave as if you were just medicine. Only you are not medicine. You are soul, and your soul needs care too. There's a pattern few can see. The repetition of relationships where you're the caretaker, the one who understands, the one who gives in, and the other, always the one who needs, always the one who hurts, always the one who returns when they're in ruins. This drains, this hurts, and this imprisons, because with each new return, hope is reborn, and along with it, illusion. The illusion that this time it will be different, that this time it's for love. But almost always it's out of the need to be welcomed, to be heard, to be seen, not as you are, but as the other needs you to be. And this erodes your self-esteem. It saps your strength, because you begin to believe you're only valuable when you're useful, when you serve, when you help, and then you disconnect from your own need to be loved, to be chosen, to be desired, not by function, but by essence. What no one tells you is that this cycle only ends when you recognize the root of this pain, when you realize that your surrender, though beautiful, is being used as emotional currency by those who don't know how, or don't want, to truly love. And here's the hardest part. People don't always do this maliciously. Often they don't even realize it. They're so caught up in their own pain, so blinded by their own absence, that they use you without even realizing it. But the effect on you is real. It's destructive, because it turns every relationship into a silent battle for recognition. You start giving even more of yourself, hoping to be seen. But the more you give, the less you receive. The more you adapt, the more invisible you become. Because true love doesn't arise from need. It blossoms in presence, in choice, in commitment. And that's why you need to start asking yourself, why do I put myself in these places? Why do I accept being half of who I am just to fit into someone else's empty space? Why do I confuse intensity with love, return with healing, longing with presence? Maybe it's because deep down you still believe you need to prove you deserve to be loved, that you need to always be strong, always understanding, always available. But that's not love. That's emotional survival. And no one was made to simply survive within relationships. You need more. You need truth. You need reciprocal presence, because your soul has grown tired of being a temporary shelter from other people's storms. And when you begin to see this, something changes. You stop accepting less, you stop explaining yourself, you stop diminishing yourself to fit into the emptiness of others, and you start listening to your own pain, the one you've always silenced, afraid of appearing weak, needy, or too demanding. But it's not weakness to want to be truly loved. It's not selfish to want to be a priority. It's not an exaggeration to want a relationship where you also receive, where you are also seen, chosen, valued. Your pain is legitimate, and it needs to be embraced, not by someone outside, but by you. Because when you start seeing yourself, listening to yourself, respecting yourself, the world starts to do the same. So before we move on, I want you to stop for a second and think, how many times have you been sought out only when the other person needed it? How many times have you confused neediness with connection? And most importantly, how many times have you forgotten yourself so as not to lose the other person? If this part of the video spoke to your soul, comment here, "I'm tired of being a temporary shelter." And stay with me, because what comes next will show you why you attract this pattern, and how Rumi already knew it has a much deeper root than you might think. Perhaps this confusion began way back when you couldn't yet name your pain. When you learned that being kind meant being useful, that you would only receive attention, care, or affection if you were solving something, fixing someone, saving someone who was lost. Perhaps you came from a place where love was scarce, where you had to stand out, strive, and mold yourself to be noticed, where simply existing wasn't enough, and without realizing it, your soul adapted, becoming an expert at understanding others, anticipating needs, healing wounds that weren't even yours, and all of this with the silent hope that one day someone would do the same for you. But the truth is that someday never came. Because when you get used to being the remedy for other people's pain, the world starts to see you as just that, an emotional bandage, and not as someone who also feels, who also breaks, who also needs to be cared for. And this disconnects you from yourself. It distances you from your essence, your truth, your soul. You start living for others, measuring your worth by their reactions, basing your sense of self-worth on other people's needs. And therein lies the spiritual trap. Rumi said, "Don't fall in love with someone who needs you, but with someone who sees you. Because love born of need isn't love. It's dependence. It's neediness in the form of affection. And you, without realizing it, may have built entire relationships on this, attracting people who weren't ready to love but were desperate to be welcomed. People who come to you because they miss themselves and try to find themselves in you. People who mirror you but never truly look at you. Who nestle in your light but never ask about your shadows. And the cruelest thing is that at first it all seems like love, because the intensity is real, the connection is deep, the gaze sincere. But soon comes the fall, because what seemed like love was just the desperation of someone trying to complete themselves through your surrender. And you dive into it. You believe it's different, that now you'll be seen, that this time you won't have to beg for reciprocity. But the signs soon appear. The other person starts to seek you out only in times of crisis. They disappear when they're feeling well. They idealize you, but they don't know you. They love you, but only for the place you occupy and not for the soul you are. And you begin to feel torn. One part of you screams for love, and the other accepts any crumb that seems like connection. You question yourself. Am I too demanding? Am I waiting for something that doesn't exist? And then you begin to mold yourself, to give in, to be less of yourself, to dim your own light, afraid of shining too brightly and pushing away the one you care about. But the truth is, the more you dim yourself, the more you lose yourself. Because true love doesn't require you to diminish yourself. It sees you whole. It chooses you, not the role you play in someone else's life. The problem isn't loving. It's wanting to be important. The problem is thinking you need to be needed to be loved. Because true love doesn't depend on that. It doesn't just appear when the other person is in ruins. It stays when everything is fine. It remains even when you don't need anything. It sees your soul, not just the comfort you offer. And here comes the spiritual root of all this. The unconscious idea that love must be earned. That you must do something to be chosen. That you must carry the other person's weight, give yourself beyond your means, accept less than you desire, lest you be abandoned. This belief is silent but powerful. It makes you accept relationships that hurt you because you believe they're the best you can have. It traps you in cycles of pain disguised as love, and it distances you from the truth. You weren't made to save everyone. You were made to be whole. And the saddest thing is that, often, you feel this way. You feel like you're nullifying yourself, that you're living on the surface of love, when your soul cries out for depth. But you don't know how to get out. You don't know how to break this pattern, because you're afraid of being alone, afraid of no longer being sought after, afraid of discovering that without the role of savior, no one will want you anymore. And it's this fear that keeps you trapped, that makes you accept less, that prevents you from seeking the love you truly deserve. But what you need to understand, what Rumi was trying to say with every word, is that true love begins when you stop trying to make yourself necessary, when you allow yourself to be seen, when you open yourself to being loved for your soul, not for your usefulness. And this only happens when you heal this root, when you look within, when you recognize that this need to be essential stems from an ancient wound, a wound that taught you that only those who save, who carry, who give everything are valuable. And that's why you keep attracting those who need you, and not those who love you. Because your energy, even without realizing it, is saying, I care, I understand, I solve. And this attracts broken people, people who want to be held, but don't want commitment, who want comfort, but don't want depth, who want you, but don't want to see you. And this will continue until you say, enough. Until you look at yourself and say, I don't need to be needed, I need to be loved. Whole, no bargaining, no exchanges, no constant effort. If you've come this far and feel like all of this describes you, comment here. I deserve to be seen for my soul. What comes next will show you the key to breaking this pattern, and finally allowing the love you've always waited for to truly find you. No one told you that love that seems too intense, too fast, too deep in the early days might not be love. Maybe it's need. Need is in a hurry. It clings, surrenders, desperate to have someone close, not for true connection, but to escape from itself. And when you appear as a safe haven, as someone who listens, welcomes, understands, you become that place of escape for those who can't deal with their own emptiness. And you, because you have a sensitive soul, because you have a heart that refuses to harden, believe this is love, that this urgency is passion, that this need is presence. But what no one told you is that need disguised as love is the most beautiful prison there is. She paints herself with sweet words, with deep looks, with promises that touch old wounds that haven't yet healed within you. She says exactly what you've wanted to hear for so long, and you believe her, because you're human, because you want to believe that finally, it's love. But soon comes the weight, the pressure, the instability, the oscillation between presence and disappearance, between warmth and coldness, between surrender and distance, and yet you stay, because deep down, something inside you thinks you can heal this, that you can save the other person, that you can be so good, so understanding, so patient, that one day this person will change, will see you, will choose you. But that's not how it works. The truth is, you weren't made to be anyone's emotional shelter. You weren't born to be a hiding place for other people's pain, especially pain you didn't cause. When you accept being this refuge, you're not being loved. You're being used, not out of malice, but out of the other person's desperation. The problem is, the more you accept this role, the further you distance yourself from yourself. You mold yourself to fit into the other person's space until you lose yourself completely. And this is where the hidden key comes in, something few realize but which transforms everything. The key isn't in giving more of yourself, trying harder, expecting more. It's in stopping, in looking at this dynamic with the eyes of your soul and saying, this isn't love. It's in recognizing that behind the pretty talk there's a pain that isn't yours, an absence that isn't your responsibility to fill, a wound that isn't yours to heal. Because true love doesn't put you in that place. True love doesn't make you carry the other person. It walks beside you. It sees you. It chooses you without needing you as an emotional crutch. But this key isn't easily revealed. It requires courage, because opening this door means confronting painful truths. It means accepting that you may have lived entire relationships trapped in a cycle of rescue, always being the one to save, the one to fix, the one to understand, always being sought out in moments of pain but forgotten in moments of peace. And this is one of the hardest prisons to leave behind, because it gives you a sense of purpose. It makes you feel important, needed, but at the same time, it empties you. It consumes you. It turns you into a shelter never inhabited by true love. And why do you accept this? Why does it persist? Because the other person's need connects with yours, with your desire to be essential, with your wound of not being seen, with your old pain of being ignored, abandoned, left for later. And that's why it feels so intense, because it's not just the present that's at stake. It's the entire past. It's your heart trying once again to be what it never could be. But this constant attempt will only lead you to more pain, to more absence, to more confusion. What you need to understand, and this is perhaps one of the hardest truths to accept, is that it's not your mission to carry anyone. Your soul didn't come to be the foundation of a house that's constantly crumbling. You came to be whole, and whole people don't conform to the pain of others. They walk alongside. They offer presence, but don't carry weight. They love, but don't cancel themselves out. They care, but don't forget. And to live this, you need to stop being a shelter. You need to give up being the emotional hiding place of those who only seek you out when everything falls apart. This key, once turned, changes everything. It makes you see the patterns. It makes you reject crumbs. It makes you choose only what is whole, reciprocal, true. It makes you stop waiting for the love that comes from need. And it makes you begin to recognize the love that arises from presence. Because you don't need to be sought out by pain. You deserve to be chosen by love. And for that to happen, You need to free yourself. You need to stop being needed, to finally be seen. If this part of the video touched you, if you've ever felt like that person who lives being the shelter, comment here. I release myself from pain that is not mine. Stay with me, because in what follows, I'll show you how this key can open a completely new path, where your soul will no longer beg for crumbs, but will attract the love that recognizes your true worth. Maybe you're experiencing exactly this right now, as you listen to these words with a tight chest. Maybe you received that sudden message after weeks of silence. A "Hi, I missed you," written in that sweet tone that confuses the soul, or perhaps that call in the middle of the night, with a choked voice telling you that only with you can you find peace. And for a second you feel your heart warm. An old hope resurfaces, because you want to believe it's real, that it's love, that finally this person understands your worth. But deep down, something tells you it's different, that the reason for your return isn't about you, it's about the other person's pain, about the emptiness they can't bear, about the end of another relationship, about a moment of profound loneliness, about the need to be embraced, not out of love, but out of necessity. And there you are again, being the emotional shelter, being the safe space, being the shoulder for a pain you didn't cause. You've become the painkiller, a temporary relief for a constant pain, an emotional remedy for someone who never saw you as a choice, only an escape. And the worst part is, you know it, you feel it, but you pretend not to. Convince yourself that, this time, maybe it will be different, because the other person's need speaks directly to yours, because the way this person seeks you touches old wounds you haven't yet healed, because it's hard to admit it's not love. This dynamic is more common than it seems. Many sensitive souls like yours end up trapped in this cycle, a cycle where you love someone who only seeks you out when they need you, who treats you as a priority for a few hours, days, or weeks, and then disappears as if nothing ever happened. And each time this happens, a piece of you is lost, because you start to wonder if you're doing something wrong, if you're demanding too much, if you should just accept this little, since it seems to be all the other person can offer. But you know in the silence of your soul that you deserve more, that you deserve someone who stays, not someone who just comes back, that you deserve love that doesn't depend on the pain of others to exist, that you deserve presence, constancy, truth, and yet you find yourself accepting less, because the person's absence seems to hurt more than their incomplete presence, because you've become addicted to this emotional back and forth, because each return, even if incomplete, seems better than emptiness. That's exactly where the danger lurks, in that illusory comfort, in that toxic yet familiar bond, because your mind convinces you that this is the best you can have, and your wounded soul ends up accepting it. But the truth is, this pattern only exists because you're still trying to heal something inside yourself. You're still trying to prove, perhaps unconsciously, that you're worthy of love, that if you're good enough, patient enough, understanding enough, this person will one day truly choose you. But that never happens, because those who see you as an emotional refuge don't see you as a soulful presence. They come to relieve themselves, not to connect. And your surrender, however beautiful and sincere, doesn't change that. On the contrary, it reinforces it. It reinforces the idea that you're always there, available, accessible, ready to welcome. And what was supposed to be a gesture of love turns into a cycle of self-abandonment. You give, but aren't nurtured. You welcome, but aren't seen. You listen, but aren't heard. The wound that opens every time this happens isn't just about rejection. It's about the silent abandonment of oneself, about ignoring one's own limits, about silencing one's own needs. And this abandonment, even when disguised as love, is a form of internal betrayal. Because while you care for the other, you forget to care for yourself. While you support the other, you weaken yourself. While you wait to be chosen, you forget to choose yourself. And all of this can seem confusing, especially when real feelings are involved. Because yes, you can love someone who only seeks you out of need. There may be connection, history, intensity, but true love cannot be sustained by absence. It does not grow in instability. It does not flourish in imbalance. True love demands presence. It demands reciprocity. It demands that you be seen not as a solution but as a soul. It takes courage to break this cycle, to say no to what hurts, even when it feels familiar, to close the door to those who only enter when they're hurt, but never stay when they're whole. This courage doesn't come overnight. It's born when you begin to remember who you are, when you realize you deserve more, that you're ready to experience a love that sees you and doesn't just use you. This awareness is the first step, but it needs to be nurtured. It needs to be honored. It needs to be protected from yourself when the urge arises to accept again what has hurt you so many times. Because your heart wasn't made to live on brief returns. It was made to build something lasting, something that expands you, not exhausts you, something that embraces you, not drains you. If you've ever found yourself in this place on being the emotional remedy for someone who only seeks you out when things hurt, comment here. I am no one's relief anymore. You are not medicine. You are not a bandage. You are not a soothing agent for those who cannot cope with their own pain. You are a living soul, whole, a sacred being who carries within you much more than the role you were taught to play. You did not come into this world to serve as a temporary shelter for those who only appear when they need to escape. You did not come to be a refuge for those who disappear every time they find themselves again. And perhaps now, hearing these words, something is beginning to break within you, not destructively but like a crack through which the truth finally enters. Because there comes a time when the pain of continuing to be used as medicine becomes greater than the fear of being alone. There comes a time when the silence of self-abandonment screams louder than the voice whispering, "Stay a little longer. Maybe now I'll change." This time doesn't come with noise. It comes with a weariness that's not physical, but spiritual. A weariness of always being the cure but never the destination, of always being the giver, the understander, the forgiver, but never the one deeply seen, chosen, loved, not for their role, but for their essence. And it is in this moment of rupture that the shift in consciousness begins, a moment where you stop begging for crumbs and start demanding banquets, where you stop explaining yourself for feeling too much, expecting too much, wanting too much, where you finally understand that your love is not exaggerated, that your surrender is not weakness, that your sensitivity is not a flaw, it is a gift. And this gift should not be thrown at the feet of those who do not know how to receive. It must be honored. It must be protected. It must be shared with those who know how to care and not just enjoy it. Rumi said, "Don't settle for a little love. You are the ocean in a human body, and the ocean doesn't fit into broken cups. It doesn't settle into fragile containers. It isn't limited to those who can't swim. The ocean overflows. It demands depth. It demands courage. It demands presence. And the same goes for you. You weren't made for shallow relationships, for fragile loves, for connections that disappear at the first wave of crisis. You were made to love with your soul, to experience encounters where there is surrender, a mirror, truth, comfortable silence, and unwavering presence. But to live this, you need to stop chasing after those who don't see you. You need to stop fitting yourself into small spaces. You need to stop begging for others to choose you. Because when you beg, even silently, even disguised as patience, you dim your light. You abandon yourself. You betray yourself. And every time you betray yourself, you reinforce the idea that you no longer deserve it. And this creates a cycle that's hard to break. Because deep down, you keep searching for the same love you didn't receive when you needed it most. You connect with those who remind you of your old absence, with those who cause you exactly the same pain as before, because it's already familiar. But now you're starting to wake up. You're starting to realize you deserve more, that you didn't come to be anyone's emotional painkiller, that you don't need to be needed to be loved, that true love doesn't hurt to exist. It embraces, it adds to you, it sees you. It doesn't need excuses, games, or back and forth. It stays. And when you recognize this, everything changes. Your energy changes. What you attract changes. Because the universe responds to what you believe you deserve. And if you keep accepting crumbs, that's what will come to you. But when you position yourself with your soul, when you choose yourself, when you look at yourself with truth, something happens. You stop settling for promises, for sporadic visits, for returns that always leave you in the same place, waiting. You start seeking what fulfills you, and not what merely distracts you from the emptiness. You understand that true companionship isn't the one who's there for you when you need them, but the one who stays even when you don't, even when you're well, even when there's no pain to alleviate. This kind of love exists, but it only comes to those who have stopped losing themselves in the arms of someone they never knew how to hold, to those who had the courage to be alone for a while but whole, to those who have accepted the pain of the breakup as part of the healing journey, because the pain of breaking free is real, but it is a sacred pain, a pain that doesn't break you, it rebuilds you, and every day you choose not to return to what hurt you, you get closer to the version of yourself you were meant to be, a version that knows its worth, that doesn't hide behind need, that doesn't diminish itself to fit into the emptiness of others. Maybe right now you're exactly at that point, halfway there, feeling the absence of those who came and went, but also feeling a new kind of presence, your own, your soul beginning to remember itself, your truth, asking for space, your light, still timid, shining again. And this, as painful as it may be, is healing, silent healing, healing without noise, healing that begins when you finally say, I deserve more, I deserve to be seen, not just sought, I deserve to be loved, not just used, I deserve to be a home, not a shelter. If you felt this while listening, comment here, I am the ocean, not medicine. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is awakening. It's not just curiosity, it's your soul. It's your essence telling you that enough is enough of crumbs, enough of repeating cycles, enough of accepting less than you deserve. If these words touched you, if something inside you stirred, then you are ready for the next stage of this journey. This channel is a sacred space. Here, each video is a mirror that shows you the pain, but also the key to healing. It's where you stop being a shelter and start being a home for yourself. So subscribe now. Walk with me, because what comes next will free you from patterns you didn't even know you were repeating. This is your symbol of decision, your emotional signature telling the universe that you're ready to truly love yourself. And if you made it to the end, leave a like, not for me, but for you, like a mark in time, saying this was the moment everything began to change. Now, watch the next video that's appearing on the screen. It's the natural continuation of what you just experienced, and maybe it's exactly what your soul needs to hear right now.